She had already survived one heart attack. She was doing everything her cardiologist had told her. She was taking her medications faithfully, watching her sodium, getting to bed early. And then, on a Tuesday morning in February, at 6:43 in the morning, she collapsed in her hallway before she ever made it to the kitchen. Her name was Dorothy. She was 72 years old, a retired librarian from outside of Philadelphia. And the thing that nearly killed her was something she had done every single morning for the last 30 years of her life, something her cardiologist had never once asked her about. I am Dr. Pablo. I am a board-certified geriatrician with 18 years of clinical experience, working specifically with cardiovascular health in adults over 60. And what I am about to share with you today is something most physicians simply do not discuss in a standard 15-minute appointment, not because they don't care, but because medicine has been slow to connect what happens in the first 60 seconds of your morning to what happens in your coronary arteries. Over the following hours, I have connected those dots, patient after patient, for nearly 2 decades, and I am not staying quiet about it anymore. Here is the physiological reality that your body is living through right now, whether you are aware of it or not. Every single morning, in the hours before and after you wake, your body undergoes one of the most cardiovascular demanding transitions of the entire 24-hour cycle. Cortisol rises sharply, adrenaline surges, blood pressure climbs, heart rate accelerates, and critically, your blood itself, the actual viscosity and clotting tendency of the fluid moving through your arteries, shifts in a direction that makes clot formation measurably more likely. Cardiologists call this the morning cardiovascular surge, and it is entirely natural. Your body is designed to do this. But after 60, the systems responsible for managing this surge, your arterial walls, your autonomic nervous system, your baroreceptors, the sensors that regulate blood pressure, they are less responsive than they were at 40. They are slower to compensate. They require more time and more margin. And when you fill that danger window with habits that add additional stress to an already stressed system, you are stacking risk on top of risk without ever knowing it. The majority of heart attacks and strokes do not happen at dinner. They do not happen during exercise in the afternoon. According to data from the American Heart Association, the peak window for fatal cardiac events is between 6 in the morning and noon. And the habits embedded in that window, habits so familiar they feel completely harmless, are the ones I want to walk you through today. I'm going to take you through 7 of the most dangerous morning behaviors affecting adults over 60, ranked in order from concerning to critical. And I want to tell you now. The one at the top of this list has research behind it that stopped me cold when I first read it. Stay with me, because that number 1 habit carries risk data that I believe every adult over 60 in this country deserves to know. We begin with number 7, and it is one that tends to surprise people because it sounds so completely innocent. It is the habit of reaching for your phone within the first 2 minutes of waking up. When you open your eyes, your brain is emerging from a restorative sleep state. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for processing social information, emotional nuance, and decision-making, is not yet fully online. Your cortisol is peaking naturally as part of the morning surge, and into that neurologically vulnerable moment, most Americans over 60 are immediately injecting a feed of information. News headlines, text messages, email subjects, social media notifications. Your brain registers this as demand. It does not matter whether the content is stressful or not. The mere act of processing incoming social and informational data before your nervous system has completed its morning stabilization causes a measurable secondary cortisol spike, on top of the one already in progress. A study published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience found that adults over 60 who engaged with their phones within 2 minutes of waking exhibited elevated blood pressure readings that persisted for an average of 51 minutes into the morning, compared to those who waited. 51 minutes of compounded pressure load on vessels that are already working harder because of age-related changes in arterial elasticity. I had a patient named George S., 67-year-old, retired electrician from outside of Nashville, who came to me after a series of unexplained morning headaches and a blood pressure reading his wife caught on their home cuff that frightened her 158, Ober 94 at 7 in the morning, when his afternoon readings were consistently normal. I asked him one question. What is the first thing you do when you wake up? He looked at me like it was a strange question. I checked the news, he said. Every morning before I even get up. I asked him to stop for 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks. Nothing else changed. His morning blood pressure average dropped 11 points. He had not changed a single medication. He had not altered his diet. He had simply given his cardiovascular system 2 minutes to stabilize before hitting it with cognitive demand. 2 minutes. That is all it took. Number 6 is something almost every adult in this country does, and the timing of it, not the habit itself, is where the danger lives. Drinking coffee before drinking water. Through 7 or 8 hours of sleep, your body loses fluid continuously through respiration and passive metabolic processes. You wake up in a state of clinically meaningful dehydration, not dramatic, not dangerous on its own, but real. Your blood volume is slightly reduced. And because of the morning clotting tendency I described, your blood is at its thickest and stickiest of the entire day. Caffeine is a mild diuretic. It signals the kidneys to release additional fluid. In a well-hydrated body later in the day, there's not a problem. But in a mildly dehydrated body at 6 in the morning, during a window when blood is already prone to clotting and the cardiovascular system is already under its natural morning load, caffeine compounds the problem. Blood viscosity raises further. The heart is working against greater resistance. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that adults over 60 who consumed caffeine as their first morning intake before any water showed meaningfully higher blood viscosity for up to 80 minutes after waking compared to those who drank water first. Thicker blood is harder to move. Thicker blood clots more readily, and in vessels that have lost some of their youthful elasticity. This is not a trivial difference. The intervention costs nothing. It takes 20 seconds, 1 full glass of water, 12 to 16 ounces, room temperature, before your first cup of coffee. That is it. No supplement, no prescription, no lifestyle overhaul. Just water first. I want to be honest with you. I still drink coffee every morning. I am not asking you to give it up. I'm asking you to delay it by approximately 4 minutes. That 4-minute delay, practiced every day, changes the biochemical environment your heart is working in during its most vulnerable window. Number 5 is the one that sends people to emergency rooms. And it happens so quickly that most people who experience it have no idea it occurred. Standing up too fast from bed. When you transition from lying flat to standing upright, your cardiovascular system must instantly redistribute a significant volume of blood against gravity upward to your brain and vital organs. In younger adults with responsive arterial walls and a fast-reacting autonomic nervous system, this happens seamlessly. After 60, the arterial walls are less elastic. The baroreceptors, the trigger compensatory responses, are slower, and the entire adjustment takes longer. The result is a condition called orthostatic hypotension, a sudden, sharp drop in blood pressure upon standing. You may have felt it. That brief wavering, that momentary graying at the edges of your vision, the need to grab the nearest piece of furniture. That sensation is your brain receiving insufficient blood flow for a window of seconds. In most cases, it passes quickly. But in adults with any underlying cardiac vulnerability, the heart's emergency effort to compensate accelerating dramatically to try to correct the pressure drop can trigger dangerous arrhythmias, or, in the worst cases, a full cardiac event. The Journal of the American Geriatric Society published research showing that adults over 60 with frequent morning orthostatic hypotension carried a 41% higher rate of major adverse cardiac events over a 6-year follow-up period compared to those without it. 41% higher risk from a habit that takes less than 3 seconds. I want to tell you about Frank. 69 years old, former building contractor from outside of Denver, came to my office after what he described as nearly passing out in his bedroom 2 mornings in a row. He had caught himself on the dresser both times. His cardiac imaging was normal. His medications were appropriate, but when I asked him to describe the exact sequence of how he got out of bed, it took him about 4 seconds to go from lying flat to fully standing. 4 seconds from horizontal to vertical, with no pause. No transition, no allowance for his cardiovascular system to adapt. I taught him a 3-stage protocol. When he first wakes, he lies still for 30 seconds and lets his body register the transition from sleep. Then he moves to a seated position at the edge of the bed and pauses there for another 30 seconds, feet on the floor, leaning slightly forward, letting blood pressure begin its upward adjustment naturally. Then, and only then, does he stand, slowly, intentionally. He called my office 6 weeks later to tell me he had not had a single episode. More than that, he said he felt steadier throughout his entire morning than he had in years. His body had not been failing him. It had simply needed 60 extra seconds of cooperation. Now I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments below. Write your age, and tell me where in the world you are watching from. I ask this at this point in every video because the people watching this channel are spread across this country and beyond. And every time I read those comments, it reminds me why this work matters. It is not abstract. It is you, specifically, and I want to know who you are. Number 4. And this is one that almost no mainstream health content discusses, so I want you to pay close attention. It is the habit of eating nothing or eating something high in refined sugar in the first hour after waking. After 60, your body's ability to regulate blood sugar across the overnight fasting period changes. Insulin sensitivity shifts. The liver continues releasing stored glucose through the night through a process called hepatic glucose output. And by the time you wake, blood sugar levels in older adults are frequently dysregulated in one direction or the other. When you skip breakfast entirely, your body interprets the continued absence of fuel as a stress state and responds by releasing additional adrenaline and cortisol to mobilize stored energy. Those stress hormones, already elevated from the morning surge, pile onto an already burdened cardiovascular system. When you eat something high in refined carbohydrates, instead of pastry, a bowl of sweetened cereal, white toast, your blood sugar spikes sharply and then crashes. That glycemic swing has direct and well-documented effects on cardiac function. Research from the European Heart Journal found that adults over 60 in the highest quartile of morning glycemic variability, meaning the biggest blood sugar swings, carried a 39% higher incidence of cardiovascular events compared to those with stable morning glucose. The solution is not complicated, and it does not require a nutritionist. Eat within 60 minutes of waking. Choose something that combines protein, fat, and fiber. Eggs with vegetables, full-fat plain yogurt with a handful of walnuts, oatmeal with ground flaxseed and blueberries. These combinations blunt the blood sugar spike, reduce cortisol, and give your cardiovascular system steady, clean fuel rather than a volatile surge and crash. Your heart has been working throughout the night. The first thing you give, it matters. Number 3. This is the one that frustrates me most because it comes from a place of discipline and good intention. And yet it is genuinely dangerous. Exercising too intensely in the early morning. Morning exercise is not the enemy. Movement is one of the most powerful cardiac protective interventions in medicine. But there is a specific collision of conditions that makes vigorous early morning exercise after 60 genuinely hazardous. Your blood pressure is already elevated from the morning surge. Your blood is at its thickest from overnight dehydration. Your body temperature has not yet climbed the range where muscle and vascular tissue perform optimally. And if you have not rehydrated and eaten first, you are adding fuel deprivation and dehydration to the equation. A large-scale analysis published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that among adults over 60, vigorous physical exertion during the morning cardiovascular surge window, Rogli says to 9 in the morning, was associated with nearly double the rate of major cardiac events compared to the identical exertion performed in the late morning, afternoon, or early evening. Double, not a modest increase. Double. I had a patient, Carol, 71 years old, a retired physical therapist from outside of Minneapolis who had been swimming competitively since her 40s. She was fit by any measure. She came to me after experiencing chest pressure during her 6 a.m. pool session, not pain. Pressure and her cardiac workup showed no structural abnormality. The problem was timing and warm-up. She was entering the water cold, in her peak cortisol window, without a gradual transition. I asked her to shift her swim to 10 in the morning and to add a 15-minute walk before entering the pool. The chest pressure never returned. Her lap times actually improved. Her body had not suddenly become incapable of vigorous exercise. It had become incapable of vigorous exercise without adequate preparation. At an hour that stacked biological risk on top of physical demand. That is an important distinction. Morning movement is excellent. Morning stillness, followed by a slow walk, followed by gradual escalation of intensity, is ideal. Forcing your heart from zero to maximum output within minutes of waking is asking it to perform a sprint when it has not yet finished warming up. Number 2. And this is the one that I think is the most invisible, the most underestimated, and in my 18 years of clinical practice, one of the most consequential: waking into active emotional stress with no buffer. Here is what is happening before your eyes are fully open, before your blood pressure has completed its morning stabilization. Your mind is already moving. It is running yesterday's unresolved conflict. It is calculating today's obligations. It is anticipating the medical appointment you are nervous about, the financial worry that woke you at 3 in the morning, the family situation that has no clear resolution. This early morning emotional activation causes a secondary cortisol surge that arrives on top of the one your body is already producing naturally as part of the morning surge. And cortisol, at chronically elevated morning levels, does not stay in the bloodstream as an abstraction. It drives measurable inflammation in the arterial endothelium, the interior lining of your blood vessels. It increases arterial stiffness. It directly disrupts cardiac electrical conduction, the precise timing mechanism that keeps your heart beating in proper rhythm. A landmark prospective study published in Circulation, the flagship journal of the American Heart Association, for you at over 8,400 adults over 64 10 years, and found that those who reported high emotional activation upon waking, not high stress overall, specifically upon waking, had a 53% higher incidence of major adverse cardiac events compared to those who reported calm or neutral morning emotional states. 53% from the content of your first waking thoughts. I want to tell you about Margaret. She was 74, a retired school principal from outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Someone who had spent 40 years managing the needs of everyone around her before managing her own. She came to me after a Holter monitor, a continuous cardiac recording device worn for 48 hours, revealed a pattern of early morning arrhythmia, irregular heartbeats clustering between 6 and 7:30 every morning, that resolved completely by mid. Her cardiologist had adjusted her medication twice. The pattern persisted when I spent an extended appointment asking her not about her medications, but about her mornings. The picture became clear. She woke every day to an immediate, internal monologue of responsibility, worry, and unfinished business. Before her feet touched the floor, she was already 3 obligations deep. I gave her one intervention. Before anything else, before sitting up, before reaching for anything, she was to spend 2 minutes breathing slowly, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6, and then name, silently, 3 specific things she was grateful for. Nothing complicated, no hurdling, no meditation practice, just 2 minutes of intentional stillness and directed thought. At her 6-week follow-up, her Holter monitor showed the morning arrhythmia pattern had decreased by more than 70%. Her cardiologist, who had not changed her medication, called me personally. This was not a mystery. This was her parasympathetic nervous system, her body's rest and repair mode, being activated before her sympathetic nervous system, her stress response, had the chance to hijack the morning. 2 minutes. That was the entire intervention. And now we have arrived at number 1, the single most dangerous morning habit affecting adults over 60 in this country. The one with the most alarming risk data, the one almost no one talks about. It is sleeping with your bedroom too warm and waking into an environment that has not been cooled, and the specific physiological mechanism this triggers during the morning surge window. Here is what the research shows. During sleep, your core body temperature naturally drops. This drop is part of what allows deep, restorative sleep stages to occur. It is also part of what allows your cardiovascular system to temporarily reduce its workload during the night. When you wake into a warm or hot bedroom environment, studies have used thresholds above 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit as the upper range for cardiac safety in older adults. Your body faces an immediate thermal regulatory demand on top of the morning cardiovascular surge. Your peripheral blood vessels dilate to release heat. Blood pressure shifts rapidly. Your heart, already in the middle of its most demanding transition of the day, is now also managing thermal stress simultaneously. Research published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology, analyzing cardiovascular event data across multiple climate zones, found that adults over 60 sleeping in bedrooms above 70 degrees Fahrenheit had a 35% higher incidence of morning cardiac events compared to those sleeping in rooms between 60 and 67 degrees. This risk was independent of outdoor temperature, independent of air conditioning use during the rest of the day, and most strikingly, it was largest in the 30 to 60-minute window immediately after waking, precisely the period when the morning cardiovascular surge is at its peak. This is the habit no one warns you about because the danger is not dramatic. A warm bedroom feels comfortable. A warm bedroom feels safe. But for an aging cardiovascular system already navigating the most physiologically demanding transition of the day, a warm sleep environment removes one of the body's most important natural protections. The overnight thermal drop and replaces the morning with a compounded demand that the heart is not designed to handle efficiently after 60. The protective routine is this. Set your bedroom temperature between 64 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit before sleep. If you share a bed in temperature as a negotiation, use a personal bedding system or a lightweight fan directed toward your side. When jiwaki, do not immediately pull on heavy blankets or move immediately into a warm room. Spend 60 seconds in the cooler air, breathing slowly, allowing your cardiovascular system to begin its morning adjustment in a thermally neutral environment before you add warmth. Open a window if conditions allow. Let your bedroom breathe. Combined with everything else I have walked you through today, the 2 minutes of no phone, the water before the coffee, the slow 3-stage transition from bed, the protein-forward breakfast within the first hour, the gentle morning movement before any intensity, the 2-minute breathing buffer before your first worry. This final piece completes a morning protocol that addresses every major modifiable risk factor in the morning cardiovascular danger window. These are not suggestions from someone who has read about heart disease in a textbook. These are observations from 18 years of sitting across from patients who were doing everything their doctors told them and still ending up on the wrong side of a cardiac event at 7 in the morning. Dorothy, the retired librarian I told you about at the beginning of this video. She made a full recovery. When I finally saw her after a second hospitalization and we went through her mornings together, we found 4 of the 7 habits I described today embedded in her daily routine. She changed them. All 4. It took her less than 5 minutes of additional time in the morning. Her last cardiac evaluation showed improvement across every measurable marker. She is 75 now, and she calls my office every year on the anniversary of that February morning. Not because she is sick, because she wants me to know she is still here. Your heart has been working for you for every minute of your life. It has never taken a day off. It has never asked you for much in return. What it is asking for now in the first 60 seconds of every morning is for you to slow down. Give it space and stop stacking demands on the most vulnerable window of its day. That is not a complicated request. It is a request backed by decades of research that most people never hear because no one in a 15-minute appointment has time to say it. You have heard it now. What you do with it is up to you. If this video reached you at the right moment, share it with someone whose morning you worry about. Leave your age and where you are watching from in the comments. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, I want to ask you to do that now, not because of a number, but because the conversation we are having here is one I intend to keep having, and I do not want you to miss what comes next.